All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am a constitutional attorney, Catherine Henry, and I'm doing this live for you today to go over some of these mask orders, the essentially stay-at-home orders, the orders that are being put out by our director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Robert Gordon here in Michigan, as well as some of the local health departments and other local agencies trying to put out these orders. Now, some government agencies are still trying to follow the executive orders that have been declared unconstitutional. I'm not going to speak about those. I think that speaks for itself. Some of our government agencies, school boards and whatnot, have been just kind of making stuff up as they go along. I can't totally address that all in one video either. So this video is going to focus on the emergency orders. Sometimes our governor has been calling them epidemic orders that you'll find on michigan.gov. And at least the statewide ones are found on michigan.gov. The county-wide ones are typically just found on the county's own websites. So I'm just going to wait. Okay, it looks like we got quite a few people already in these first minute or two here. So I'm trying something new where we're not necessarily going through Facebook these days with all the problems that Facebook is having, not to mention the censorship issues and whatnot. So forgive me as forgive me as I'm learning the ins and outs of doing YouTube Live versus doing Facebook Live, although I never quite mastered Facebook Live either. So I will ask, now I'm not necessarily going to be able to keep up with all of your comments, most likely not, because I'm going to be going through the laws. I will ask that as much as I cannot stand our governor, as much as she is violating the Constitution, violating state law after state law after state law, as much as she is forgetting her oath of office, as much as she needs to be criminally and civilly held accountable for all the things that she's doing, that you'll refrain from name calling, because our side, the side of the Constitution, the side of doing the right thing, we can prove our point with no need for name calling or any of that stuff. So I'm just going to ask you to refrain from doing that for anybody on either side. I wouldn't want to be called names from people that disagree with me or think I'm doing the wrong thing. Lord knows I've definitely had my fair share of phone calls, text messages, emails, and threats of all kinds, which I don't appreciate. So I want to make sure I'm not encouraging others to do the same thing to her that I wouldn't want done to me. Thank you, Francis. So I'm going to try to be quick because my baby boy is, I'm going to spend some time with him today. His birthday's coming up. He's going to be 17. So I'm super excited and distracted about that. I'm not sure if you guys can see this okay. I might have to do some adjustments here. Okay. Hopefully this is not backwards for you. I was afraid if I did it the other day when I held up my little signs on my paper like this, and I was doing it through YouTube as well as through Facebook. I believe it was Facebook that was backwards, and I didn't even think about that. So anyway, people on YouTube got to read it, and people on Facebook had to hold it in a mirror to read it. So I believe you guys should be able to see this okay. Lori, okay, hopefully, Lori, you're telling me that things are going the right direction there. But so what are we talking about? So we're talking about, let's see if I can do it this way a little bit. Elements of contact tracing, microchipping, the COVID and flu vaccines. Notice how the flu vaccine has been snuck into some of these things. Mini legal secretary, I need you to do your schoolwork. Thank you. Masks being mandated, social distancing requirements, and temperature checks. Specifically, with contact tracing, the elements that are in these orders are requiring businesses to track their customers, write down your name and your phone number, and we're going to write down your temperature, and we're going to do all these things just for you to shop in our store or utilize our services. It's insane. So those are the topics that we're talking about. As far as where they're getting it from, I hope you guys aren't trying to give me all those comments directly, because I cannot remotely keep up with all of those. That's a lot of questions going on, but I'll try to check in with that in a minute. So MCL, Michigan Codified Laws. In Michigan, that's where our laws are. That's where our statutes are, Michigan Codified Laws. MCL 333.2253. That is the one that the state director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Robert Gordon, is using in issuing his mandates, okay? Local health departments like Oakland County, and I want to say maybe Ingham and Livingston, they are issuing those through MCL 333.2453. Now, what's the difference? Not a whole lot. Basically, the 2253, it gives the same language as 2453, only 2253 is specifically for the statewide health department, and 2453 is for the local health departments. So what can you do under these statutes? They can do three things. One, we're going to come back to this. They can prohibit gathering of people for any purpose, allegedly. That's what the law says. Number two, they can issue orders to do things that would ensure continuation of essential public health services. Well, what's a service? A service is something that you do for the benefit of somebody else, something that you are offering to them. A service is something that you can, as the recipient, decline. So a service would be essential public health services that should continue during periods of COVID-19 or pandemics or epidemics or anything like that. Should be mental health services, should be continuing to be provided. Pregnancy testing should be continued to be provided. Ultrasounds for mothers who cannot afford proper medical care during pregnancy could be provided. Things like cancer screenings or pap smears, mammograms, whatever kinds of things. If it's something the government was already involved in doing before to ensure public health, they can continue to do those things and should continue to do the offerings. Sorry, guys, I will turn my phone on silent. So I will, at any rate, they need to continue to do what the law says is they need to continue to ensure the essential public health services are met. Now, I think the level of health services provided by our government, well, that's a topic for a different day. So we'll come back to that. But assuming those are all fine and dandy and should be done and whatnot and even be offered, those are the kinds of things that can be offered, right? They cannot force upon you a pregnancy test. They cannot force upon you a mammogram, right? So they can't force upon you any other health services. If you would like to utilize public health services for mental health, you can do so. If you would like to take them up on their STD testing, you can do that. If you would like to take them up on, any kind of other public health services, it's a service. You can choose to take it or not take it. And so if they would like to offer education on COVID-19 and how people with comorbidities or essentially other underlying health conditions, those who are immunocompromised, are more at risk for getting COVID-19 and for being more at risk to have severe side effects or implications from having COVID-19, that kind of educational piece would be an essential public health service that they could provide. The offering of masks and things like hand sanitizer to communities that maybe have trouble accessing those supplies. That would be a public health service that arguably they could make sure to provide that in communities, have it available in, public buildings, courthouses, or things of that nature, not required, but offered, where people need access to something like that, say if they're immunocompromised, if they have underlying health conditions and they need to be extra precautious, whether it's flu season, COVID season, the common cold season, if they traditionally would need some extra help in that regard because their immune systems are low, offering those kinds of supplies or services are things that they could be doing. That could be ensuring continuation of public health services. Quite frankly, you could make the argument, though, that continuation implies something that was already present in the first place. And COVID-19 is this new thing. We've never had to do anything with any kind of COVID-19 education or wearing of masks or offering of masks or anything like that before. So you could argue that continuation means that none of this new stuff is even something that they can even do. But I would say the biggest element here, the most important, is the word services. It's a continuation of essential public health services, something someone or an agency does for you for your benefit that you can choose to decline. If some guy wants to come and mow my lawn as a service, and of course, you know, he is expecting to get paid for that service, I can obviously say to him, no, thank you. I don't want your service. I will mow my own lawn. He cannot force that service upon me. So, and the same thing holds true in the public health services realm for, you know, whether it's a private practice doctor or whether it's a government agency, the local health department that's providing some sort of health service. Again, it's, you know, our body, our choice, right? We get to choose whether we're going to accept a service. At least that's what I keep hearing from all these individuals fighting so hard for these masks. Those are generally the people that fight for the whole right to abortion and things, which we won't even go there in this conversation. So the third thing they can do is under these two laws is to enforce health laws that are already on the books. They can't make new laws because they're not the legislature, and we'll go over that. They can enforce current laws. Well, I have an arrow pointing over to MCL 8.8 because what does that law do? That law is literally the law that says laws defined. It tells us what a law in Michigan is. So they can enforce anything that has gone through the procedure and been named as a law under MCL 8.8. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. So that brings us up here. Okay, so in terms of thinking about who gets to make laws and what are they, let's look at some basic concepts. Can you guys, let me see if I can move things around here. Okay, that's a little bit better for now. So Article 1 of our U.S. Constitution, I'm doing this all off the top of my head, so maybe I wrote it down, but I didn't look it up before I wrote it down. So I believe Article 1 is the legislature, Article 2 is the president, and Article 3 is judicial power. Okay, so Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution says that all legislative power belongs to Congress, to our U.S. legislature. Legislative power, the power to make laws, the power to regulate the people. Article number 2. Article number 2 in the U.S. Constitution gives the president, the executive branch, the power of the executive power, right? The power to enforce the law, not to create it, to enforce it. Article number 3 of the U.S. Constitution gives the judicial branch, the Supreme Court of the United States, the judicial powers, the powers to, let's see what the wording is on that. Wow, no wonder why it gets a little confusing. Anyway, the judicial power is vested in them. So they have the power to hear cases, to hear disputes, and to read the law that's already been made, not create new law. So that's important too. So without going into a big whole discussion on that, I'm going to point out that we have a separation of powers element here. We have clearly defined roles within our federal government, and that's super important because the concept of separation of powers, the doctrine, if you will, is something that's been around since our country has been formed. But our state constitution, all these say Michigan, Article 4, Section 1, gives, in the state of Michigan, our legislature has the legislative authority. Article 5, Section 1 gives the governor the executive authority. Article 6, Section 1 gives our state Supreme Court the judicial authority here in our state. And so you could say that these essentially mimic or follow the way that powers are distributed in the federal government. We see that here in the state government under these provisions. And so our recent Supreme Court decision here in the state of Michigan talked about that. It talked about and utilized analysis, case law. Judges don't get to make laws, but anyway, case law that has gone through decades that are describing the separation of powers concepts here and applying that down here, which ordinarily I could see how that might be true. But number one, the federal court specifically brought it back down to the state court to ask the state Supreme Court to describe or answer questions relating to our state law and our state constitution. And we should have focused primarily on what's been happening here in our state and not necessarily with the federal courts in that regard. But that's a different story, I guess. The most important thing, though, is that the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, after the Supreme Court came out and said, sorry, hold on, no more earthquakes. My camera shakes every time you're on the table. Get your knees off the table. Now. Okay, don't bump into it again because everybody's thinking we're having an earthquake here, okay? Sorry, sometimes small legal secretaries have little challenges here and there. So anyway, the director of the Department of Health and Human Services came out after the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. And he was actually quite nasty in the way he described things. He and the governor had huge disdain, not only for the legislature, not only for the Constitution, but also for the court. And saying that because of what the legislature did by suing the governor because she's violating the law and the Constitution, and by the court doing what they did, telling everyone, yeah, she's violating the law and the Constitution, somehow it's not her problem, it's their problem, and they're creating more deaths in the state, which they're not, but beside the point. So what he did there, though, is he talked about this doctrine. Let me find exactly what I'm talking about here. So you can have an understanding of how this relates to the orders that he's putting out. Okay. Okay. Oh, no, wrong part. Sorry. So the director of the Department of Health and Human Services did essentially a press release to go along with his first round of emergency orders to replace Governor Whitmer's executive orders. And in doing so, he said that his emergency order is lawful under the Michigan Supreme Court's recent decision. That decision rested on something called the non-delegation doctrine, a legal notion never before used to invalidate a Michigan statute and not used to invalidate a federal statute for 85 years. The doctrine has become popular on the anti-government right, and a 4-3 Michigan majority has now used it to invalidate a 75-year-old Michigan law. Number one, I don't care how long a law has been on the books. If it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. The longer it's on the books, it means that's that many more government officials that should be held personally responsible for allowing it to continue. Second of all, the fact that he talks about the anti-government right. No, you're the anti-constitution left, and you need to leave the United States if you don't like the foundational principles upon which our entire government exists in the first place. I don't mind our government as long as they're acting within the bounds of their constitution. Also, he talks about this non-delegation doctrine as a notion never before used, right? As this, principle, something that's a doctrine, right? A notion, something that's basically, just somebody's thought. It comes out of thin air. It doesn't really have any force. No, what you need to do, sir, is remember, I'm going to get into this later, that you took an oath of office to uphold the U.S. and Michigan constitutions and having your particular role, right, as the director of the Department of Health and Human Services. And so in that role, you need to remember to read the very Constitution that you took the oath to uphold. So for example, let's take a look then at the big key ticket item here, right? So Article 3, Section 2 takes it a step further. So we have these that talk about which branch gets to do which thing, and these which talk about which branch gets to do which thing. But then you have this right here that talks about the fact that we have a true separation of powers. In fact, if you look at our state constitution, it says right in here, it's only 2 sentences long, this part is, and it says, Article 3, Section 2, the powers of government are divided into 3 branches, legislative, executive, and judicial. That is the title of this heading is Separation of Powers of Government. So separation of powers is not some notion in the state constitution. It's not just some doctrine. It's literally in writing in the state constitution. It is not in writing in the U.S. Constitution. So although common sense would say, you read these to say each of these branches has their own powers and that's it, and you can't share them and you can't intermingle those powers, those who want to defy common sense in that regard can't apply that misuse of logic to the state constitution, because we have the same foundational breakup or breakout of different powers. But on top of that, we have Article 3, Section 2 that very clearly says there's a separation of powers. And the second sentence in that section says, no person exercising powers of one branch shall exercise powers properly belonging to another branch, except as expressly provided in this Constitution. The only way that the governor can exercise, or anybody from the executive branch can exercise legislative authority in the state of Michigan, is Article 5, Section 2 of our state constitution, which I'll get into. Well, I'll get into that right now. That's fine. Article 5, Section 2 of our state constitution allows the governor to issue executive orders to reorganize the executive branch, the people that work for her, essentially, to reorganize the executive branch. And in order for that to really have legally binding effect as law, right, then she has to submit it to the legislature, and they have 60 days to disapprove or veto of that decision. And if they do, then it doesn't go through. But there's a process for that, and it's specifically only allowing her to issue these executive orders that reorganize the executive branch. Nowhere in there does it say, nowhere in the Constitution does it allow the governor to create regulation for the people at all. So that brings us then to what are laws? As I mentioned earlier, MCL 8.8 says there are only 3 things that qualify as a law in the state of Michigan. The first is that which goes through the normal legislative process, right? So the House and the Senate vote on it by at least a majority, and then it goes to the governor's desk, and then she signs it, or if she vetoes it, it goes back to the House and Senate. They have a 2/3 majority, and then they pass it through, okay? First way. Second way is voter initiated legislation. What we just saw recently with the 1945 repeal. That is a repeal, but it was initiated legislation to create a law that took another law off the books, okay? And so in order to get that going, the language was approved and all that other fun stuff, and then they collected signatures, and they needed a minimum of 340,047 signatures to get it pushed on to the next stage of things, which I'm sure people will ask what the next steps are with that, and we'll go over that in some other video. So anyway, that is the second way, is if it had gone through and the legislature had voted on it, or if it goes to the next general election ballot, which at this point would be November 2022, and at least a simple majority, 50.1% of the people voting on it votes in favor of it, then it becomes a law. Okay, so that is the second way that you can have laws in Michigan. The third way is if you have an executive order issued under Article 5, Section 2 of the state constitution. So it specifically recognizes executive orders and specifically reduces or restricts only those executive orders that follow Article 5, Section 2 of the state constitution. So this law recognizes that we have a separation of powers, and the only people that get to make laws are the legislature or the people. The people retain ultimate authority here. That's riddled all throughout our state and federal constitutions, especially Article 4, Section 4 of our U.S. Constitution, which guarantees us that Republican form of government. But so we bring this back to enforcing health laws that are on the books. That's one of these things that these emergency orders can do by the local or state health departments. Again, is it a law that you have to wear a mask? Is it a law that a store can use contact tracing methods, or they have to use contact tracing methods against you? Is it a law that you have to be at half capacity to have your business open, or that as a movie theater, you can't open until October 9th? Is it a law? No, it's not a law. So there's nothing here that allows them to do that. And we already talked about here, requiring people to wear masks, requiring people to have their whereabouts traced and contact tracing methods by businesses and other places. No, that's not a law. Microchipping, no, that's not in law. And it definitely does not ensure continuation of public health services. COVID-19 or flu vaccines, those, no. Masks, social distancing, temperature checks, again, those do not do those things. Those are things that maybe places want to offer. We can offer to check your temperature if you'd like, to see if you're not quite feeling well. But quite frankly, I don't think that would be permissible in a private setting like that. Any setting where it's not being done by a medical professional who's properly trained and licensed to provide medical care. If they are allowed to do that as a business owner, as a store owner, if I'm allowed to take people's temperature and provide that information to them to help assess any kind of medical scenario or condition at all, then wouldn't I be practicing medicine? And if we're allowed to practice medicine without a license, well, then why do our midwives or our nurses or our doctors even need licenses here in the state of Michigan? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Let's keep that in mind. So that takes us through these orders and what they're allowed to do. I skipped over prohibit gathering. What I didn't put on here, as you could tell, I kind of sort of ran out of room here. We have a lot of things. This should be the obvious one. Can a state law prohibit gathering? No. Marbury versus Madison in the 1800s was a case that explained to us that while the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, you could see that in Article 6 of our U.S. Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So where you have a law that contradicts the Constitution, it's void on its face. It's not enforceable. So where a government agency thinks that they have the power to do that, where the legislature thinks that it has the right to put it into a law to allow a government agency to do that, it's not a thing. It's void. We don't have to wait for the courts to sort that out. It's as though it never even legally existed in the first place. Let's look at oh my goodness, I'm forgetting some of my Constitution here. I want to say is it the 14th Amendment that, oh, nope, losing my mind. Oh, the 15th Amendment. Nope, nope. Yeah, lose my mind. Don't mind me. Anyway, there's amendments out there that maybe it's the 10th Amendment. I think that's what I'm looking for. No, I can't think of what I'm looking for. There's a part of our U.S. Constitution that requires states, it applies the restrictions on states as well. So a state cannot abridge the protections or immunities of the privileges or immunities of United States citizens by creating laws that do the very same thing that Congress itself cannot do in federal format. So we have those protections, and we have in here, obviously, the First Amendment, that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Free exercise of religion. So if we would like to gather for things that our religion allows us to, or encourages us to, or even requires us to gather for, then we have the right to do that. And we can, there's no law that can be made that prohibits the free exercise thereof. And no law can be made to abridge the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So if we want to assemble for any reason and it's peaceful, we have the right to do that. I mean, you can't go on to somebody else's home and then, like open their door up and say, hey, we're just going to assemble here for fun and we don't know you. But anywhere that it's public property or where you own the property, those are areas that we're allowed to peacefully assemble, and the government can't do anything about it. I don't know what they don't understand about the concept of that they can't abridge the right of the people to do this. Abridge means to try to change, modify, restrict, reduce in some way. You cannot restrict the right of the people to do that. You certainly can't eliminate it outright, which is what prohibit means. Not only that, but our state constitution allows us, Article 1 is our Declaration of Rights here in the state of Michigan. And Article 1 says that in Section 3, it's called assembly, consultation, instruction, petition. The people have the right peaceably to assemble, to consult for the common good, to instruct their representatives, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So the people have the right to do this. Now, mind you, we don't have any of that fancy unabridged wording right here, but if you look up just a few sentences before, it says that we, the people of the state of Michigan, grateful to Almighty God for the blessings of freedom that were given to us, and earnestly desiring to secure these blessings undiminished for ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. So we created this so that we can exercise these rights undiminished. So unabridged and undiminished, whether you look at the state or federal constitutions. So can the public health director, can the local health department diminish or abridge our rights or prohibit us from gathering when that's clearly protected here? No. Obviously, the legislative people involved back then, our legislators, and quite frankly, any attorneys that were involved in advising them back then, or the governor who signed it, and everybody since then in government who should have been doing something to clean that up. I think they skipped government 101 on that. But it doesn't change the fact that the Constitution does not allow any government agency to just simply blanket prohibit gathering of the people for any reason. So that's totally unconstitutional. That is not a mandate, and that is not a mandate. So are they allowed to utilize this law to mandate any of these things? No. There's no new mandates that can be made. This does not allow any new stuff because you have continuation. And this is enforcing stuff that's already there, the laws that are already on the books. And now I turn to this. So I'm going to try to turn it back for you guys. Okay. So that brings us to, what about all these people? I have an insane amount of people that call, email, text, try to get me through Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. I'm going to ask you to not try to keep asking me these questions, because I promise you, all information related to masks is going to be here. It's all going to be here. It's all going to be here on YouTube. It's going to be here in terms of if you clicked on this link through my website, restorefreedomkh.com. I'm going to have any information I have on that, I will have discussed at length in YouTube videos, as well as having any kind of written resources that I might be able to come up with for you on that website. The more people try to text me, call me, email me, whatever, everyone thinks their question or their situation is super simple and it's a quick yes or no, and I can just give them the Staples Easy button and then bam, they can press that and the whole thing is fixed. I don't have a Staples Easy button for any of this. If it has anything to do with what the government is doing right now for COVID-19, the answer is not a simple, well, sure, you have the right to do that. And then that means what? I mean, yeah, you do have the right to live. You do have the right to go in public. But we know that's not the questions that are being asked of me. Every single one of you wants to know, then what can you do about it? Therein lies the problem. It depends is the question. What are you willing to do for your freedom? So in that sense, I'm trying to give you the information through videos like this so that you can then act on that. You can write the school board a letter. You can call or email your local health department. In fact, Robert Gordon, the director of the Department of Health and Human Services in Michigan, says right in his press release, and I do believe right actually in the order itself, there's an email address they're asking for comments on the order. Make sure you reach out and answer him. Answer that email and tell him what you think about him trying to utilize these statutes to have orders that do these things in direct violation of a whole bunch of constitutional provisions. Let him know. So whether it's somebody, an issue you have a question about what the governor is doing, state representatives or senators, police or attorneys, whether you're talking about your local school board, bus drivers, principals, teachers, any government employee, here's what you need to know. Any government employee fits into this. So Article 6 of our U.S. Constitution says that if you are a government official in the executive, legislative, or judicial branches, then you have to take an oath of office in order to be in that office. The oath says you will uphold the U.S. Constitution, period. Article 11, Section 1 of our state constitution says that if you are an elected or appointed official in any of those branches of government, then you have to take an oath of office to support and uphold the U.S. and Michigan constitutions, period. In fact, our oath says that you can, in fact, have no other oath in order to do those duties. Then you have state law MCL 15.151. That says if you work for government, if you represent the government in any kind of capacity, in order to have that role, you have to take an oath of office to uphold the U.S. and Michigan constitutions. So no more should you ever be able to say, well, I'm just following orders. Following orders isn't your oath of office, and it doesn't comply with all of these provisions. Following the oath means that you are reading the Constitution, that you know the Constitution, and you are doing your best to uphold the Constitution. You cannot support or uphold the Constitution if you haven't even read it. You certainly cannot uphold and support the Constitution if you're not reading it constantly and trying to figure out if in your role you are about to violate a provision in there. And simply having ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? I've done defense work for years, decades, over a decade. Started when I was 12. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, in doing defense work, and anytime, any of us are charged with anything, right? Whether it's we get a speeding ticket or, there's some sort of bigger criminal violation at play, what do we know? Well, if you sit there and say, well, I didn't know that was the law. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, ignorance of the Constitution is no excuse either. If you are a government employee or government official, you cannot hide behind, I didn't know that's what the government wasn't allowed to do. I didn't know that's what the Constitution said. That is your job, to know what the Constitution says, period. So where does that leave us? Well, all of these individuals individually have taken that oath. Every single school board member, every single, dude, you got to stop bumping the table. Every single person who is in government at all, a teacher, the local city clerk, your local township trustee, every single person. It doesn't matter if the government office seems super small or super big. And I'm sorry, give me a second here. I'm a little confused about what all this is. Okay. There is a pink thing that looks like it may be something called a super chat, and I'm not quite sure about what to do about that other than say thank you. So the right here, any of these people, any individual person right here, they have taken that oath. And that means they not only have to follow all of that, but they have to remember some key components. One, the government is not allowed to act unless the state or federal constitution gives them the authority to act. Why? Because we're a constitutional republic, and we, the people, have the ultimate authority. Article 4, Section 4 of our U.S. Constitution, and of course, the 10th Amendment, and in our state constitution, Article 1, Section 1, that all political power is inherent in the people. And we have other, it's riddled with other things, other provisions all throughout the Constitution that explains how it's we, the people, are in control. The government, in fact, our state Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court have said on numerous occasions, the whole point of a Constitution is to lay out the specific duties or functions of government and to place restrictions on the government, and then to provide protections for the individual liberties of the people. Not to limit the people, to provide protections for individual liberties. That is the whole point of a constitution. If you don't like it, not my problem. That is what it is. And so in there, it's important to recognize the government cannot act unless the state or federal constitution give them the authority to act. On the flip side of that, do you know how many times I get calls, text messages, emails, whatever, asking me to show someone where in the Constitution they are allowed to do X, Y, Z? Well, I'll tell you what, sometimes there is a provision like to be able to have your own firearms. Okay, we have a Second Amendment, or in our state constitution, we have Article 1, Section 6 of the right to keep and bear arms. However, two important things. Remember that God gave us our rights. The government didn't give us our rights. So we don't need to ask permission from the government for those rights. We don't need to wait for the government to tell us we have the okay to go ahead and exercise our God-given liberties. In fact, with our Constitution, our state constitution, Article 1, Section 23 of the state constitution, and the 9th Amendment to our U.S. Constitution, it spells out God gave us a ton of rights. We're not going to list every single one of these rights. However, we do get to exercise those rights. And in fact, the government still has the duty to protect each and every one of those liberties. So not only can they not trample all over those rights, they have a duty to protect those rights. So what are some of those rights? Well, to breathe fresh air, absolutely. Absolutely. That is number one. To not have people, take my temperature, force me to be microchipped or receive some crazy vaccine, to have to wear a mask, to prohibit my breathing or my communication with others, for people to trace every single whereabout that I've had. No, we have the right to have individual liberty as we move about our lives. We have the right to parent our own children. We have the right to live within our own families and our own homes. So all of these are not acceptable. And these explain that we have all these other inherent rights. Now, okay, so we got to wait for the Supreme. So this is the most common response. Okay, so that means you're going to sue the government so that we end up having it go all the way to the Supreme Court and they can tell us that there is, there's a right to not have to wear a mask, right? Will I end up suing people? You better believe it. You better believe it. However, do you need to wait for me or any other attorney to file a lawsuit against the director of the Department of Health and Human Services or one of these people in order to bring it all the way up through the court system so that the Supreme Court can tell us we have the right to breathe without wearing a mask? No. If we needed to have it listed in order to have it as a right, then we wouldn't have clauses, two of them, 1, 2, that say we have unenumerated rights. Unenumerated means unlisted. We don't have them listed out like that. So keep in mind, those two things you need to read. You need to know, you need to study. They're not very long, not very long at all, but they are essential to what's happening right here. So, mask requirements. You can read this, but I'm going to read it for you. Are they legal? No. No, they're not legal. So you can ask me any different combination scenario setting. Are mask requirements from the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, your local health department? If we're following these laws right here, are they legal? No, they're not legal. Are they constitutional? No. Now, what if they're using some other law on the books? Is that constitutional? No, it doesn't make it any more constitutional just because they're using a different law. There can be no law which infringes upon our rights here or any of the other enumerated rights that we have. No law supersedes the Constitution, even in times of emergency, especially in times of emergency. So, some final thoughts, right? I'm going to get out of the way of the board. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this okay. So 3 basic terms that we hear a lot, especially when it comes to all of these mandates, right? Is that the government's here to protect us. The government's doing their job to keep us safe. The governor said she's going to use every single tool at her disposal to keep the public safe, to protect the public health, because it's her job to, protect our welfare. Public health, public safety, public welfare. What are those? Well, are they found in the Constitution? Health. The term health is found 0 times in the United States Constitution. Not going to happen for you. You cannot use that, the United States Constitution, to support that you have a job or an obligation or the right to control the people regarding public health. Michigan Constitution. The Michigan Constitution uses the word health 4 times, only 3 in terms of the concept of public health. And the first way is with regard to natural resources, to be able to regulate so that there's natural resources available to us, so that all of our trees and lakes and things are not polluted and destroyed. They're allowed to own public property for the health of the people, public health and welfare of the people. So the government entities are allowed to own parks and things like that, to be able to have the opportunity to serve or offer things to people to be able to promote their health. The last way that the term health is used in our state constitution, Article 4, Section 51, Article 4, meaning in the legislature's part of the Constitution, meaning the governor, the executive branch, any of these guys, they have no right to make laws because this provision is specifically within Article 4 of our state constitution, which says that the legislature can make laws and shall make them that in a way that is suitable. They have to make suitable laws to be able to promote the public health. Okay. So what's important about that is suitable. If you're violating the Constitution or any other provision of our Constitution, is that suitable? No, obviously not. So can suitable also encompass other things? Sure, but if it's not constitutional, is it suitable? No. What about welfare? Welfare is mentioned twice in the U.S. Constitution. One, the first time is in the preamble to the Constitution, and it talks about promoting the general welfare. Does promoting mean that you get to regulate the crap out of people or require anything of them? No. The other way that welfare is talked about, welfare is mentioned, Article, boy, I had it right in front of me. Article 1, Section 8. Emma, you cannot lean on the table like that, baby girl. Article 1, Section 8. Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. What is that talking about? That's talking about providing for, paying for. So the U.S. says that the government can pay for the public welfare, the common defense and public welfare. So infrastructure, the ability for us to have the armed forces provided for, paid for, those kinds of things. Nowhere in that, it's all about finances in the whole sentence. Plus, if you look up the definition of the word provide for, especially if you're looking at an Old English dictionary, which would have been the terms at use back then when the Constitution was drafted, providing for in the sense that a parent goes out to work and earns money to pay for their children to be able to eat and have clothes, that is exactly the term that is defined in there. So it certainly doesn't mean regulate the crap out of or require a bunch of things of people. That does not even make sense to fit into the context of Article 1, Section 8 of our United States Constitution. Michigan Constitution has 3 times the word welfare. The first time is it's talking about regulating atomic energy. Okay. The second time it's talking about regulating for natural resources. Okay, kind of talked about that over here. And the third way that the word welfare is used is Article 4, Section 51, that says that, and this is important because people often overlook this. Article 4, Section 51 of our state constitution says public health and general welfare. The public health and general welfare of the people of the state are hereby declared to be matters of primary public concern. Okay. The legislature shall pass suitable laws for the protection and promotion of the public health. Notice what's missing there. It doesn't say that the legislature shall pass laws to promote or regulate the public welfare or the general welfare. No, it says the legislature can pass laws regarding the public health. But again, those have to be suitable. So keep that in mind. They specifically call out public health and general welfare of the people as 2 distinct concepts, and only one of them is allowed to even have laws relating to it, meaning the other one is acknowledged, but you cannot regulate for our general welfare. Something that is drastically misunderstood and misquoted as a constitutional right of the government to do, and it never has been. So safety. Well, how many times is safety written into the U.S. Constitution? 1. And that is that it's Article 1, Section 9 of our United States Constitution. And it says, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. That's it. It's not allowing for general legislation to be made or general regulation of the people to be made to secure public safety. It is simply allowing the concept of public safety in terms of a justification where in exceptionally rare circumstances, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus may be suspended. That's it. Nothing about this in there. And then Michigan Constitution, the word safety is actually mentioned 6 times. However, only 3 of those times even relate to public safety. My brief that I submitted to the court on September 16th goes and explains, by the way, the additional time that I didn't talk about here and the additional 3 times. So in case you think I'm lying or I don't know what I'm talking about, or you're just interested to learn more, those additional times I talk about every single time. I cite every single time these words are used in our Michigan and U.S. constitutions, and you can find the references there as well as the descriptions in the brief that I submitted to the Michigan Supreme Court on September 16th. And it's available right on the resources tab of our website, restorefreedomkh.com. So the 3 that it does really pertain to public safety are these 3. Number 1, we have a similar provision, almost exactly word for word, for the writ of habeas corpus, that it shall not be suspended unless in times of rebellion or invasion, the public safety might require it. Again, it's not a general regulate us for this to protect our safety. No. Also a provision about natural resources. Again, it's the same one that we've actually seen for public health, safety, and welfare. And again, just as we saw over here, the public safety, we're allowing the government to own property to, say, for example, have a police station or any kind of other government building that would be necessary for us to ensure that we have forces and government people available to provide services, keyword there, for the protection of public safety. Okay. So those are the only places that public safety is even talked about. Nowhere in here, writ of habeas corpus, natural resources, owning buildings, does it allow the government to do any of these things. Nowhere in there. So our government, our foundational principles in our Constitution acknowledge health and welfare and safety of the people, and yet do not allow them to do any of this, even while acknowledging all of this. So we need to keep that in mind. With that being said, I do have to go pick up my super handsome baby boy who is turning 17 and will be so thrilled that I've been calling him my super handsome baby boy. And I need to get going. So what I'm going to do is very quickly look and see if I can answer any kind of questions. I at least wanted to give you this information. And again, if you have questions about what your next steps are to pursuing action against a government entity or even a private organization, or you have concerns because your loved ones are in nursing home facilities or anything like that, I ask of you, please do not contact me right now. I will make a posting like none other. I'll shout it from the rooftops when I'm able to help people get into the nitty-gritty, the details of that. I want to continue to be a resource for everyone in the state right now, which is why I'm surviving on donations and greatly appreciate those. But I'm only I have one case that I will be filing, and that is with regard to a chief of police who essentially had to sacrifice his entire career to stand up and defend the Constitution. So that is the only case that I am taking right now. The other cases I will take in the future. Oh, you better believe it. I will take more cases. I will be filing cases. Absolutely. I'm not able to do that right now. Between explaining laws to people, which literally has been a 24-hour-a-day thing for me, and making sure that we get our constitutional amendment petition, the Restore Freedom Initiative petition, getting all those signatures in and collected and turned in within the 180-day time frame, that's where my main focus is right now. So I ask of you, if you are just seeking information, please check out restorefreedomkh.com. Go to the resources tab. There's a ton of resources. All of my videos are linked through there, as well as any radio interviews, the lives I've done, the TV interviews, all kinds of information will be on there. All of my briefs with all the citations, I will try to see what I could do about taking a picture of this ugly board that I did for you to have. And trust me, it doesn't matter if you're someone who does not know me yet or someone who's known me for quite a few years. The answer is the same. I don't have a Staples easy button. This is the information I have for you. In order to specifically sit down and apply that for people, I don't have the time to do that right now. I'm trying to educate people on the bigger sense, okay? I need you guys to step up and be leaders in your communities, utilize these things, and go forth and share this information. Don't be afraid of the truth. Don't be afraid of the Constitution. Certainly don't be afraid to exercise the rights that God gave you, that the government's sole job in coordinating and coming together as a government entity is to protect those very rights. So if you are a government official, I have had several government officials who are trying to reach out to me because they want to make sure that the rest of their board does the right thing, for example. I'm going to ask those of you who do not work for the government, who are just trying to seek redress or protection from those people, again, follow those resources so that the people who work for government agencies, those who are government officials or government employees who are trying to do the right thing, that I can try to spend my time and resources on empowering them to do the right thing. That is what I would love to do. So allow me to try to focus my resources and my energies to calling those individuals back and texting them and doing whatever I can to get the tools in their hands that they need to do the right thing. And so I guess that's basically, let's see what kinds of questions. Okay, there are a lot of comments. Okay, Lori says not really a ton of real questions at this point, stuff that I've already kind of gone over. The only question I really see right here right now is how does it work for kids at school and why do I not go for governor? I'm not sure why you mean if I should sue her or something like that. That will definitely be happening. But as far as how things apply to children in schools, again, these people took the same oath and our children have these same rights. So might there be other laws on the books that I haven't talked about here today that would apply in those situations? Absolutely. There's probably a ton of other laws, federal and state laws that apply. In fact, the one thing I didn't talk about right here is 42 USC section 1983 and 18 USC section 241, which are they're avenues of federal law to hold these people criminally and civilly responsible for violating their oath of office and violating our rights that they have a duty to protect. So with that being said, hey, if you guys really want me to run for governor and not move to Florida like I really want to, then you guys would have to run the campaign. Somebody else can be out there. They can create a candidate committee. They can, get the treasurer and the secretary and all those roles put into place. Somebody can be the head of, creating fundraising events and things like that. I will go to events. If there is a campaign for me in that regard, I guess I would do that, but I am not running a campaign for governor. So here is where I'd rather be. But if the people of Michigan pull together that strongly, I guess that would be a sign from God that I need to stick around a little bit longer. And I would do that, but don't expect me to run a campaign for governor. So with that being said, yes, you can, Jane. You certainly can. So I thank you all for tuning in. And I appreciate this. I ask that you share this video, get this information out in the hands of people, encourage people to empower themselves by going to the website, by subscribing to this YouTube channel, hitting that notification button so that they can get notified as soon as I am going live. And we can try to get in the information in the hands of people all across our state. Quite frankly, I have people all across not only the whole United States, I have people all across the world that are asking me to help them fight their governors or their governments in doing all the crazy things that they're doing all across the world. I'm only one person, guys. I don't have any paid staff. It's me volunteering. It's a bunch of volunteers who really are trying to focus on the Restore Freedom Initiative petition. So I ask that you guys keep that in mind and utilize all this information to empower yourself and those around you to do the right thing and to fight for our freedom, which we already bought and paid for a long time ago, quite frankly. So anyway, thank you so much, everyone. I will continue to put information up here as I have a chance to do so. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.